tests that have attention composites, which is attention indexes. The Mindy Mental State Exam has serial 7s. That's one of the subtests of it. And that's a good measure for attention, and that's part of the whole testing, the whole battery. It has an area of looking at attention. And also the Mindy Mental State Exam, I talked about last time we were here. It's a 5 minutes for their brief version, 10 to 15 for their standard version, 20 minutes for their extended version. It looks at all of these different areas of, many different areas of functioning, including orientation, concentration, attention, memory, and it's published in many different languages. Hello. All of these different languages, and they do have 2 different versions, the blue and the red alternative forms. But the RBANS. Let's talk about the RBANS for a second. The RBANS has digit span, which is a classic digit repetition test of word memory, which stimulus items increase in difficulty. They start with 2 and they go to 9, and they have 2 different tasks. So you ask them the digits as they increase in length, and if they miss the first, then you give them another same length digit span to repeat, and once they've missed both of those, then you discontinue that subtest. So the second one is coding, which is a processing speed subtest. It's very similar to digit symbol of the WACE. It looks like we're going to administer these for our excited audience. What we're going to be looking at first is digit span, and I'm going to. The record form has all of the instructions that you'll ever need, so that's nice. The actual items that I'm giving are not part of the test, so in essence I'm giving different numbers than that's actually on the test because the test is copywritten. But I have permission from Pearson, thank you Pearson, to actually demonstrate the use of the instructions specifically. So this test actually doesn't start with this subtest, but I'm going out of order just because this is how I've organized my class. So I'm going to say some numbers, and I want you to repeat them after me, okay? 1, 8.
1, 8.
5, 3, 9.
5, 3, 9.
8, 9, 3, 1.
8, 9, 3, 1.
5, 7, 6, 8, 2.
5, 7, 6, 8, 2.
6, 2, 8, 1, 9, 3.
6, 2, 8, 1, 9, 3.
1, 8, 3, 2, 5, 6, 7.
1, 8, 3, 2, 5, 6, 7.
2, 4, 8, 3, 9, 2, 5, 8.
2, 4, 8, 3, 9, 2, 5, 8.
Okay. Look at these boxes. For each one of these marks, there's a number that goes with it. Down here are the marks, but no numbers. I want you to fill in the number that goes with each mark. The instructions say that you're supposed to demonstrate the first 3. So I always do it upside down because, you know, I want to work at Macaroni Grill someday. So this one goes to this one, so I'd write a 9. This one to this one, I'd write a 1. Okay? Now, I'd like to see if you can fill the rest of these boxes up to this double line for practice. Good. All right, so what you're doing here is watching to make sure she gets them all right, and if she doesn't, then correcting her as she goes. But she got them right because she's good like that. All right. Now I'd like for you to continue to fill the numbers that match the marks. Go as quickly as you can without skipping any. When you finish this line, just go on to the next. Are you ready?
Yes.
This is when you have your trusty timepiece. Always have a trusty timepiece. All right?
Your cell phone has the timepiece.
Or if you have a cell phone, use your cell phone. Otherwise, I highly recommend you pick up a dozen of these and put them in all of your testing supplies. because you will be without one, or your phone will be out of battery. And so you start timing as soon as they start going, and you give them 90 seconds. But you don't tell them you're giving them 90 seconds. Go. All right. During this time, you're paying close attention to what she does. Because if you start doing other things, as I have in the past, you will see sometimes, especially people who are impaired, will start just filling in the numbers. They'll see one and then they'll just start filling in all of them that are like that. And you say, no, you have to go one after the other. You give them 90 seconds to complete as many as they can. And you don't distract them during this time, right? You certainly don't do that sort of thing. But you would take note of their handedness during this sort of test. You don't necessarily have to ask them their handedness. I always ask them their handedness, and I take note of which hand they actually use. I had someone tell me that they were left-handed, and then they were using their right hand for writing everything. And so later I asked them, I noticed that. And he's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And I'm like, don't be sorry, just trying to figure out what's going on. And I found out that he was malingering. That's what was going on. Okay. So, man, 90 seconds takes a long time, doesn't it? Thank you. So those are two of the subtests that you'd be given. And we will talk about the test onto itself a little bit later. Another test is the trail making test. Now the trail making test, if you just type in trails A and B or trail making test, you can find this. This is shareware. This is free, no longer copywritten. However, the comprehensive trail making test, which looks like this, is copywritten, and it's available from Pearson. Also, I found one online, which is kind of neat, so you could just take it online to see what your score is. I don't know how valid or reliable it is, but it's a fun one. So there's many different trail making tests. Trail making test has been around for a long, long time, since the 1940s. It was originally part of a general IQ test that the Army gave. Do you have it? No?
We don't have that slide, but we have.
Oh, no, you might not have this one. Yeah, okay. So the test is a neuropsychological test, and it looks at visual attention and cognitive flexibility, task shifting. And it requires people to be able to connect the dots. So if you have someone who is in a sling, don't give them this test because they need their dominant hand. They need to be able to have a motor component to it. And there was some argument that the motor component is actually what's being tested, but all of the new studies out there are refuting that. They're saying no, that Trails is a really good test for what it says it's measuring, so it's a very reliable and valid test. So Trails A is a straight up, you're supposed to be connecting the dots 1, 2, 3 until you reach, I think it's 25. And that's straight up processing speed. How fast are they processing information? Trails B is you're supposed to connect the dots going back and forth, switching number, letter, number, letter. So you start with 1, go from 1 to A, A to 2, 2 to B, B to 3, in order until you reach the end. That was actually the instructions. That's directly from Screens and Strauss. If you're going to be doing any neuropsych assessment at all, I highly recommend picking up not only this book, but LASIK. This is the older version. The newer one is about twice this size. And they're coming out with a new LASIK this year, I believe. The Compendium of Neuropsychological Tests, and this is actually in, I think, the 4th edition or 3rd edition, and then Neuropsych Assessment by LASIK. The reason that these two are so good, this one goes over all different types of tests, how to administer, how to score, and how to interpret them. It doesn't break the copyright laws. Certainly they have permissions for some of the things they're putting in there. But it does have things like the shareware trails administration instructions, and it does have norms to score them. So that's why I highly recommend that you pick up both of these books. If you're doing any type of neuropsych assessment, you have to have them. LASIK is also really, really good for interpretation. it will get into the nuts and bolts of the different parts of the brain that are affected when you have strange test findings. Now, color trails is normed for people 18 and over, though I heard that they might have a children's color trails out there somewhere. It's only using numbers, not letters. It uses vivid pink and blue for people who might have colorblind problems or color blindness. And it's just like trails A and B in that you're supposed to alternate between colors and numbers. It's culture free. It's one of the best tests to use for people who have English as second language or any kind of deficits with knowing their ABCs. Because I gave the Trails B to someone once, and when he got to J, he didn't know how to go on. He kept on repeating the letters, kind of mumbling, and I realized that he didn't know his ABCs. So that invalidated that whole test. That's when you would pull out color trails instead. Or be cognizant of the fact that he has either learning disabilities or he doesn't know his ABCs or English as second language, and just use color trails. It would be one that you would choose as an alternate test to using trails A and B when you have someone who you need a culture-free test for. Also, just a note about report writing, if I don't say it later, anytime you're doing report writing and you're talking about scores, I like to keep things universal. So if you're going to be talking about T-scores in one test, talk about T-scores on all of your tests. If you're going to talk about standard scores on one test, talk about standard scores in all of your tests. I actually don't put scores themselves in the body of my test, on my report rather. I put descriptive ranges and percentiles. So I'll say someone's in the 99th percentile or the 40th percentile because most people understand percentiles. And I will say that means the average range or the extremely low / impaired range because people understand ranges. So descriptive categories are really important. But if I were to talk about T-scores, Z-scores, standard scores, whatnot, I always like to put them in the same language so that whoever's reading it can understand. They don't have to flip back and forth because not everyone is savvy to all of these conversions. You administer the sample first. You say, hi. I want to see how fast you can connect the dots. I want you to start with 1, go from 1 to 2 to 3 in order until you reach the end. Work as quickly as you can without making mistakes. Do you have any questions? Good. That was really well done. Okay, so we're going to do it again. On this page we have more numbers. Again, I want you to start with 1, go from 1 to 2 to 3 in order until you reach the end. Work as quickly as you can without making mistakes. Do you have any questions? All right, I'm going to time you this time. Go. What I am doing is watching, and I've got my pencil. And why do I have my pencil? Because if he does make a mistake, I want to get in there very quickly and put a little X where he made the mistake and say start here and go from here to there. All right? 16 seconds, he made no mistakes. I'm going to write the time on here so that I remember. Now the instructions are a little bit different with the CTMT. The CTMT says that if they make a mistake, you don't say, oh, I see you made a mistake, start here and go from here to here to tell them where the next place is. Springs and Styles will tell you that the original trail making test, that's the instructions. The comprehensive trail making test says that you just tell them you've made a mistake, start here with the last one that they were at and hope that they figure out where that mistake was. Mistakes are factored into the time. On this page we have more numbers, but we also have letters. Now I'd like for you to start here with 1 and draw a line from 1 to A, and then go from A to 2, 2 to B, B to 3, 3 to C in order till you reach the end. You'll start with a number and go from number, letter, number, letter. Do you have any questions? All right, go. Good. So we've got more just like that. Again, we're going to start with 1. I want you to go from 1 to A to 2, 1 to A to 2, 2 to B, B to 3 in order till you reach the end. Work as quickly as you can without making mistakes. Do you have any questions? So with the printout, if you do use the shareware version, you might want to make sure that the 1 is delineated from the I, because they look alike. On the CTMT, it does not look like that. And again, I'm watching to make sure he doesn't make any mistakes, and if he does, I'm at the ready. Good. All right, 32 seconds. If anyone wants to look that up in Sprains of South, you'll find that was within normal limits. So that's how you would administer that. Again, you're poised at the ready to make sure that you note if they make any mistakes. I suggest if you do administer these tests, go over it, administration, at least 3 or 4 times so that you know 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, so that you're always one step ahead of the person in front of you. Because the worst thing that you can do is say, no, you made a mistake and you're the one making the mistake. Trail making test, it pulls on many different areas of attention. It's also areas of executive functioning and impulsivity. So we'll be talking about trail making tests throughout this presentation. It's just a really awesome test to have, and it's a great screening test. It took all of 2 minutes. The children's version is from 8 to 16, available from PAR. The Color Trails is specific to PAR. I didn't find it on Peer. So interpreting trails. 1, it's always based on time. The norms yield age-related percentiles and T-scores. Always remember, 1.5 to 2 standard deviations below the mean is significant. 8th percentile or less is in the borderline range. I got that off the conversion chart that I threw around for you guys. The process approach, which is the number of impulsive errors that are made, that's something to note when you're actually talking about the test itself in your write-up. You'll want to talk about how many impulsive errors were made. Because if the guy has a really fast processing speed, but is super impulsive, he might show within normal limits as per the T-score and the percentile. However, he might have made 6 impulsive errors to get to that point. They might have all been self-corrected, but they were still impulsive errors, and that means, translating to real life, that he might be more impulsive and make more impulsive errors in life. Another thing to watch out for is this cognitive flexibility and set shifting. I have had people with dementia who just can't do Trails B, or in comprehensive trail making tests, Trail 5. And after they've gotten to 3 minutes and maybe 6 errors, I go ahead and stop the test, and I then just use it as a process test and say that he made 6 impulsive errors and wasn't able to complete the test. Because once you get to 3, he's in below the first percentile anyway. 3 minutes, once you get to 3 minutes, they're going to be below the first percentile anyway. And there's no reason to promote the anguish, because some people who are taking the Trails B who just can't do it start to fall apart after a while. And so I had let someone go until 5 minutes, and they were miserable. And they said that was a miserable test, and I'm like, it was miserable for both of us. So that's why I've just started not giving them the whole time and just noting that it's invalid. That's just my style now. Do all of the tests in the morning to get the best baseline of how they are, because medication can also help with sundowning, and so can behavioral changes and environmental changes. So you always want to get people at their best. That's why it's always best to do testing in the mornings, if you possibly can, especially for older individuals or people with traumatic brain injury, because they sundown too, in essence. And were they able to understand the sample is another thing that I like to know. I have had people incapable of even getting through sample on Trails B, and if they're not even able to get through the sample, there's no reason to torture them with the whole test. Now the Stroop. Everyone loves the Stroop. The Stroop is also a measure of attention and executive functioning. It's hailed as one of the best tests for attention. The Stroop effect was first noted by John Ridley in 1935 in an English paper, though it had been published previously in 1929 in Germany. And it's listed as the most cited experimental psychology paper that's out there. I don't know how true that is. But the Stroop looks at a number of different things. There are actually two versions of the Stroop that I've found that are for public consumption. There's a gazillion of them online. If you just type Stroop, you'll find a whole bunch of online tests for it. But in general, the two that are out there have a word reading, and then color naming, and then you're supposed to name the color of ink that the words are printed in. It's a fun test. And they have a children's version, aged for 5 to 14. They have the adult version, and then they have the Stroop Neuropsych screening test, which is from 18 to 79. And the color word test adult version is actually the one that I'm holding right now. And the decafs also has, and the NEPSI also have Stroop tasks in them. So the Stroop isn't, it can be a standalone test, it also can be part of a broad. More screening tests that are used for attention include the ability to focus, which is measured by Trails A, Stroop, and really any time test from the Wechsler system. Divided attention, which is digit symbol, Stroop, digit span, backwards and attention without processing is found in the Wechsler system, digit span, forward, and Trails. And selection and control, remember we were talking about the different types of attention, Trails B and the co-op. The co-op, the controlled oral word association task, we're going to talk about in a little while. And then sustained attention, well, you can show them the monkey gorilla video, see if they're able to follow that, or you could do any kind of cancellation task. Rough 2s and 7 is one, another cancellation task is found on the new WACE and WIS. More extensive tests of attention, many of you I'm sure have heard of the Wisconsin card sorting task. Really good task, and it's available with a computer presentation, so you don't even have to touch the cards. Really nice. The continuous performance test. Okay, so there's this test online. If you type in continuous performance test, it has a demo that totally crashed my computer and almost drove me crazy, because what the continuous performance test is a big white screen, and it flashes different letters. And when it gets to the letter X, you're supposed to hit the space bar. And they come up like, I want to say, every second, every 2 seconds, do another one. No, it's pretty fast, so maybe it's every second. And you're sitting here, and you're sitting here, and I looked, and 3 minutes had passed, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm still doing this silly test. And 5 minutes had passed, and I'm like, I'm done with this test. Well, that's the continuous performance test. That's actually how the test is. Not to say that the demo won't mess up your computer too, it might, but it is a test, and that's all it is. And can you imagine someone who has attention deficit disorder? What happens with people with attention deficit disorder is they start doing other things. If you're testing a kid with this test who has attention deficit disorder, they'll start playing with something in their lap or doodling if they possibly can. What happens with adults with attention deficit disorder with this test? They fall asleep. Or they get angry. Yeah, I might have fallen asleep. It was really that kind of test, but it is a great test for looking at your attention, and it's been linked to really looking at in-depth people with attention deficits, how fast they respond to that X, that sort of thing. How many impulsive errors they make. There's other tests. The TOVA is very much like the CPT. The NEPSI, which I keep coming back to for children, great test. And then the decafs, which I'm actually a big fan of. It takes a little bit to administer, but it includes all of the different components. It has a Trails task, a Stroop task. It looks at many different areas of